During the early 19th century, the harvesting of these magnificent creatures was one of New Zealand's most important economic activities. Dozens of whaling stations sprang up around the coast, attracting workers from all over the world. Now a team of archaeologists is delving into the lives of these early whalers and discovering surprising clues about the communities they formed. They're suggesting that evidence of the birth of our Kiwi character could lie hidden in the crumbling remains of an industry that once flourished from hunting whales. Before the exploitation of fossil fuels, whales, especially southern right whales, provided a raw material that people desperately wanted: oil. In early winter, when the southern rights migrated north, the breeding whales and pregnant cows would seek out sheltered bays to mate and calve before returning south. At virtually every breeding spot, a whaling station would spring up to meet the demand for this precious oil. Wellers Rock here in Dunedin Harbour is a perfect example of the boom and bust nature of the industry, a story that was mirrored in whaling stations all over New Zealand. At the height of the 1830s whaling boom, there were as many as 30 shore-based whaling stations operating around the coast. Although whaling continued into the 20th century, there are now only 13 sites left with outstanding archaeological remains. Otago University's Ian Smith has been excavating 2 of them.
So the whales would have been hunted outside the mouth of the harbour there, and the channel coming in here. So this rock was in a brilliant place for them to be able to haul them right up and attach them to these iron stanchions here. They could have brought them in any side, really, depending on which way the wind was blowing or the tide.
Which way the wind was blowing, yeah, I know what that's like. It blows from every direction down here, doesn't it?
Yep, on a good day.
Southern right whales were so named by the whalers as the right whale to kill. Their V-shaped blow was a dead giveaway for whale spotters on shore. And with a swimming speed of just 2 knots, a whale boat could easily row alongside and make a kill. Most importantly, they floated when dead, making it easy to haul them alongside boats or into the shallows where they could be cut up or flensed before rendering down by boiling the blubber in trypots to produce oil. The oil was used for a range of purposes, such as lubrication in early steam engines and for soap and candles. But it was as lamp oil that it was most eagerly sought. And then there was the lucrative trade of harvesting baleen, long strips of flexible bone from the whale's mouth used to sieve plankton, finding another use in the shaping of women's corsets.
Where do these whalers come from?
The ones who came to Wellers Rock were almost all from Australia, but prior to that, many of them would have been from England or various other parts of the British Isles. Of course, you'd have people who would come to the whaling station to work as a cooper or a carpenter, so there were a whole range of trades involved as well.
So, could it be that these diverse groups, living and working together, gave us the first elements of the Kiwi character that makes New Zealanders unique? To find out, I'm heading to a remote spot where Ian Smith and his team are well into their latest excavation. Perhaps the thing that strikes you most about these excavations is that so many are in the most remote, out-of-the-way locations where people wouldn't even think about settling today. Back then, though, it was all about being in a place where you could make the most of natural resources like gold, timber, or whales. The once thriving whaling community of Te Hoi can't be found on any map today, and little is recorded of its history. But we do know that the first whaling stations in Hawke's Bay began operations around 1837. Here at Te Hoi, the team is excavating an early shore whaling station dating back from right around the time of the Treaty of Waitangi. It might not look much at the moment, but as we're discovering, a remarkable snapshot of the early whaler's life is beginning to emerge from under all that sand and driftwood. Like Weller's Rock near Dunedin, the sheltered side of Mahia Peninsula proved an ideal spot for southern right whales to gather and breed. As most whaling took place during the winter breeding months, the team are getting a good feel for the conditions our isolated whalers endured. Their only main contact with the world beyond being the occasional ship calling to pick up the oil.
What does it say? I'll tell you. Heavy rain.
There's a heavy raining or what? Shall we go to
Ian Smith's Otago University team is joined by a man who's surveyed virtually every whaling site in the country, Auckland Museum's Nigel Prickett. Together they plan to build a picture of life in one of our early whaling communities.
This looks a good spot.
But it seems the birth of our Kiwi character came from a melting pot of diverse cultures.
Most of them, I suppose, were from Europe originally, but there are a lot of Americans here, including a lot of black Americans. Quite a number of whalers, including in Hawke's Bay here, were Aboriginal.
But by far the largest group of whalers were the locals, who, with their families, made up a large proportion of the population.
Many of them were actually Maori, particularly in an area like this, where the people had had a long tradition of exploiting whales through stranding and so on. The local Maori people took to whaling very eagerly.
Quite a hard life, obviously. They must have been renowned as hard men.
Yes, they were. Yeah. This part of Hawke's Bay was often referred to as Alsatia, after a notorious haunt of sort of bandits and people outside the law.
But to get under the skin of these early whalers, the team will need to dig deep. We caught up with Rhonda Steele from Otago.
Hey Rhonda, a whole heap of whale bones here. What do you got today?
Yeah, well, we found a whole lot of this whale bone coming right along here, and then also some barnacles that were probably off the whale coming out.
Fantastic, yeah. So is this what it's all about to be an archaeologist, to find everything all together like this?
Yeah, no, it's great to find a whole lot of stuff. It makes it really exciting to get everything together.
I take it it's not the norm though, to find metal, bones, barnacles, the whole...
No, this is pretty unique.
This is a rich area.
Yeah, really rich, really good digging.
This seemingly insignificant pile of rocks is in fact a very important part of our early manufacturing history. These try-works, where the blubber was rendered down, are yesterday's equivalent of today's giant oil refineries.
So here we have the industrial centre of the whaling station, and this is really amazing. This is the first time we've had the opportunity to investigate a try-works that's as complete as this. These flues in here are clearly designed to make some kind of almost like a blast furnace.
Trying to figure out how these furnaces worked often results in a new theory emerging as each layer is unearthed. But with the help of computer imaging, Ian is able to visualise for the first time how the Try-Works furnace system operated.
I mean, this is just a fantastic chance for us to see how these things work. We've never had that opportunity before. Never. And at least as far as I'm aware, we've never had that opportunity anywhere in the world to see something as complete as this. We've got another Try-Works.
But right next to this Try-Works, they unearthed a second furnace with a surprising added extra.
But all the others were completely buried. When we dug down in here, we discovered this great big iron ship's tank that has been sunk into the ground here. So what they were doing is, after they've rendered down the oil out of the blubber, they're pouring the boiling hot oil into this. It's a cooling tank. Because of course they have to cool it down before they can put it into barrels. So what we've got here actually is the whole process of production, from boiling down, cooling, and then right over here we had the bottom of a barrel just sitting on the ground just here a few days ago. Roll them out to sea, off they go.
This second Try-Works was probably built to cater for the abundance of whales at the height of the season. By analysing the compacted ash found in the flues, archaeologists know scraps of blubber were used as fuel to generate the intense heat required. To see the results of his work come to life, for Ian, it doesn't get any better than this. Archaeologist Ian Smith is excavating one of New Zealand's earliest industrial sites, a shore whaling station on Mahia Peninsula, where up to 50% of the workforce would have been local Maori. This reflects the close connection Maori had with whales and whaling in these close-knit communities. But what evidence is there Maori were whaling before Europeans arrived in New Zealand? The answer may lie at the base of Farewell Spit on the very northern tip of the South Island, at a place called Triangle Flat. Here, another investigation is underway. Barney Thomas is the Doc Maori advisor for this sensitive area. His karakia pays respect to the ancestors, as well as opening the area for visitors to safely go about their business. Whales have always played a spiritual role in Maori life. They are represented in carvings and ornaments, and sperm whalebone clubs were highly prized by chiefs.
Way back in the old days, when a whale stranded up, it was seen as a koha or a gift from Tangaroa. The whole whale was utilised, from the teeth, the bone, the meat, everything was utilised as a food source.
This region is a place where whales strand in large numbers. No one knows exactly why, though it could be the gently sloping seabed of Golden Bay that confuses the sonar of small pilot whales, although larger sperm whales are also known to strand here. Now, archaeologist Ian Barber from Otago University has found evidence that Maori have been harvesting the beached whales at this site from as early as the 15th century.
Triangle Flat's an interesting place because we have evidence of a very, very extensive archaeological occupation. In particular, we have evidence of whalebone, and that whalebone includes whalebone elements that almost certainly have been extracted from freshly butchered animals. We find so much of this material at Triangle Flat that my interpretation is that this was a whale processing site. People were processing whale meat and whale bones for artefact manufacture. In my opinion, it was a big part of the reason why people are here at Triangle Flat.
Further evidence of whale processing has come to light with the discovery of large stone flakes near to where whalebone has been found. It's even common to find stone flakes protruding from the eroding dunes next to the excavation.
So that's the flake tool here.
So this is a good flake. You can see exactly where it's been struck. Nice.
At the base of the nearby Puponga Pa, the locals would have had a handy quartzite quarry at their disposal.
So you've got a very, very accessible rock source. You've got cobbles that are literally eroding into the sea, and those cobbles were very close to where whales would have stranded.
Maori were adept in the quick manufacture of stone cutting tools by simply splitting stone boulders to create a flensing blade, ideal for a wide range of tasks.
There were many, many tools that would have been used. They would all be utilised for the flensing and the utilisation of the meat and the harvest of the whale.
Maori were attracted to the whaling industry. They loved the rich meat it provided and the opportunities that work in the industry opened up to them.
Well, it was a form of employment for our iwi people, but it was also a lifestyle as well. So when we had whaling stations and employment like that, it was a natural stepping stone for them.
By the early 1840s, with oil production booming, the whalers should have seen a prosperous future, but the industry was controlled from overseas and money always seemed tight.
I'm sure it was a way of life that appealed to a lot of people. They wanted to get into the cash economy. There were things that they wanted to buy, and here was an asset that they had.
And were they well paid, whalers?
No, they were pretty badly paid. They were paid mostly on a lay system. They got a proportion of the profit. The lay for just an average pulling hand was pretty small. It was like 1/120th of the profit of that station. And a large part of that was taken in advance for tobacco and rum and slops that they bought at inflated prices from the operation.
So if you didn't catch a lot of whales, you might end up owing the boss for the season.
Yeah.
For a short time, the station would have prospered while whales were plentiful. Many whalers settled and married into the Maori community. Today, their descendants still live nearby. Ian is keen to learn more of the social side of life here and is finding the whalers' houses inspire some very interesting theories.
Some pretty amazing stuff over there about the way that they worked, Ian. What about their living conditions, though?
Well, if you come over here, we've got the part of the site that really brings that to life. You can see up here the chimney, the sides of it there, big fireplace in here, that was all full of ash, and this is the chimney of a very large house. This house was built over the top of an earlier period of whaling activity. You can see the post here, it's been dug down into this deep midden, and this midden has got bottle glass in it. This midden is really interesting because it's absolutely full of shells.
With the European artefact in mind.
Yes, so this is Maori food remains in the whaling site. So what that tells us is that the European whalers came here and they lived with Maori women, and they were essentially living a Maori life.
I also can't help noticing, though, Ian, that the top of the post here is charred, a couple of the others as well.
This house must have burnt down. This charring on the top of this post, you can see it on all but about one or two of the other posts. And over here, these are whale vertebrae that have been used as piles to hold up the floor of the house in front of the fireplace.
Also charred across the top.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, I suspect these were actually put in after the house was built to support the floor when it started to sag a bit, but they certainly were there when the house burnt down. Another thing that happened when the house burnt down is that the things that were on the mantelpiece fell down into the fire, and what we found right here was a partly made whalebone patu that had fallen in.
A metaphor for the Maori European integration?
Oh, absolutely. It was just beautiful finding that. It was fantastic.
Then a discovery from beneath the floor level, from before the house was built. Could it be a crucial piece of evidence Ian's looking for?
One of the most fantastic little finds we've made here. Look at this. And what we have here is a fish hook. This is made in exactly the style of a pre-European Maori trolling lure, and it's made out of copper. So a Maori style artefact in a European material. And it's got detail on it here. Look at this, these little grooves here. That's where the line attaches. Now that's exactly what you find on a Maori bone hook.
There's a metaphor for the integration of cultures.
It is exactly that, the integration of cultures in material form.
But Ian's quest for knowledge about the relationships within our early whaling industries is under threat. Once the artefacts are recovered, the process of decay could destroy them. Many are in such a delicate state that they require crucial conservation work in order to save these earliest remnants of our industrial past.
So I'll just roll the object over. I'm just checking to see what the underside is like, and just this extensive cracking.
Ian relies on his research assistants and students for the task of assembling and logging the thousands of artefacts recovered from Te Hui.
Here we have a mid-19th century rind pattern plate.
These remnants will help him piece together the social patterns that shaped Maori-Pākehā relations before the influx of colonial settlers following the Treaty of Waitangi. Like a forensic scientist extracting DNA, Ian Smith is looking to determine how these settlements lived and breathed. With the help of computer imaging, he can now bring these try-works back into virtual working order. But whaling also changed the Maori ways of life. Many travelled the world on ocean-going whaling ships, utilising the skills gained from feeding the insatiable tripods. But by the late 1840s, those who chose to stay were looking elsewhere for employment. Today, most of these early whaling stations have disappeared, along with most of the whales that supported them, as happened at Wellers Rock.
They were really very brief operations. I mean, 1834, 310 tonnes of oil, 1841, 10.
Oh, just gone.
Just gone.
1841, 10 tonnes from 310 to 7 years before.
That's right.
So they only brought in, what, a couple of whales in 1841?
Absolutely. And the reason is there just weren't any more whales out there.
They just completely exhausted the stock, had they?
That's right. I mean, the whales were coming in here to calve. And of course, say you're taking the females and the calves, it isn't very long before there are no more left.
The most enduring evidence to emerge from these whaling sites is the fact that from the 1830s, Maori and newly arrived Europeans lived and worked in relative harmony while enjoying the mutual benefits of the industry.
It's telling us about the integration of Maori and European within this whaling settlement and the development of a new mixed culture.
So in some ways this is where the integration began, the birthplace of Kiwi culture, if you like.
Well, absolutely.